Hello. Hey guys, happy Tuesday. Hope you guys had a wonderful long weekend. We were out enjoying the sunshine and the water with our dogs, so that was really nice. Today we are going to talk about loose leash walking. So there is nothing more frustrating than trying to go outside, enjoy the outdoors with your dog, go get some exercise in and bring along your 4-footer, and then you are getting drugged left and right. I've even seen people take tumbles with their dogs pulling them over. And this is the last thing that we want when we are trying to go out and go for a walk with our dogs. So today we are going to talk about loose leash walking and give you guys the one-on-one on what you will need to do with training and equipment to really get that nice loose leash that I know you guys are all dreaming of. So first of all, what is a loose leash? When I go out and walk with my dogs, I do not require a formal obedience heel. I don't need them right next to my side. Now, they do know that skill on cue for competition obedience, for rally. Sometimes I'll use it in the city if we're kind of navigating a narrow crowd, which we're not doing too much these days with the pandemic. So they know that behavior, but that's not a behavior that I'm requiring from them when I'm going out and going on a nice walk. What I do require is loose leash. So this means that no matter how long my leash is, I want there to be slack in the line. I don't want my dogs putting pressure on me unless we're doing dog-powered sports. So that's going to be the most enjoyable way for us to all go out together and enjoy a neighborhood walk. Hi, Lynn. Thanks for joining us. A neighborhood walk or even a walk on the trail, right? We want that nice, high-quality, loose leash. So why is it important? You know, I do dog-powered sports with my dogs. We do canocross and bike joring and scootering where they're in special harnesses, which we talked a little bit about couple weeks ago, where they're allowed to put pressure on that leash and pull. But I don't want my dogs to be putting pressure on the line all the time. It's not comfortable for me if I'm not in my specialized equipment, and it's not great for them. When we're heading out on surfaces like asphalt for a park walk or even a neighborhood walk, I don't want them really digging down on that asphalt because it's not good for their feet and their body. It's also a foundation for basic pet manners, right? If we want to be able to take our dogs out places with us, like a pet store, or like I said, a walk in the park, they need to know how to walk on a loose leash. If we're trying to do something like the CGC test with them, or do some therapy dog work, or yes, Lynn, absolutely, some service dog work, we need them to understand the concept of loose leash. It's a foundation for a lot of these other things that we want to get into with our pets. So we need to teach them how to walk on a leash with slack in the line. So when we're training this behavior, what skills do we need? You can teach it a variety of ways. For me, I use a few skills the most often. I have an attention getter, so I teach my dog how to pay attention to me and give me eye contact, both on their own, if they offer it, and when I ask. We have a video on our website or our YouTube channel called The Name Game, and this is the skill that we use. I say the dog's name like Lennon or Lucy, and they turn around and give me attention. Because if I have attention, I can ask them for everything else that I need from them. Another behavior that I use a lot when I'm doing loose leash walking is my hand target. So this is where my dog takes their nose, we'll pretend this is my little dog here, and they touch my hand. And they do that on a verbal cue as well. And this is a really nice way to redirect our dogs. So maybe my dog wanted to go left and I go, oops, we're not going that way, we're going this way. Or maybe they went to go sniff and then I'm calling them back with me to start my loose leash walking again. That hand target is a really nice way to get the dogs from point A to point B without putting a ton of pressure on them, right? I'm not physically grabbing them and moving them. I'm asking them on cue to do a behavior they know and come with me a little bit more. So it's a really nice way, especially for puppies when they're first kind of figuring out how to walk on a loose leash. I use that hand target a lot to kind of redirect them and help keep them focused. It's also a great game that we play with dogs that might be a little worried or a little bit reactive, where they see something and they get really stimulated. It's a really nice way to ask them to turn that attention back to us and keep them occupied with a fun game, a fun trick that they know. So lots and lots of purposes of our hand target. Another skill that we need for loose leash walking is the concept of forward motion without pressure. So this is kind of the bulk of what we do with our loose leash walking, is teach our dogs that as long as they're moving forward on a loose leash, good things happen, which is both food reinforcement and the ability to get to go forward, right? Because that's what they want to do. That's why they're pulling to get to go. Hi, Anna. Good. Polishing up on loose leash skills is a good thing to do. I know that you are working with Lumi on getting that CGCA for her, so this will be good for you. So we're teaching our dogs that when they move forward on a loose leash, they get to where they want to go. They get access to certain things in the environment that are really fun for them, and they're getting those nice high-value reinforcers from us. The other thing that I really like to teach with my loose leash walking is release of pressure. So just like my cue, sit, means for the dog to put their bum on the ground, the presence of pressure on the line when we're doing loose leash is a signal to them to release that pressure. So we're walking along and all of a sudden my dog makes a mistake. Hi, Kim. Hi, Melissa. Hi, McKelly. Thank you guys for joining us today. So we teach our dogs or our puppies that when they feel pressure on that leash, that's a cue or a signal for them to turn around and pay attention to me. So just like I say sit and the butt hits the ground, or I say here and their nose hits my hand, that cue of feeling tension on their loose leash walking harness is their signal to release the pressure. So I'm teaching my dog basically how to not pull. I'm teaching them the absence of it. So when we are working on this skill, now remember, I know we've got some dog-powered people. I see we've got some dog-powered people tuning in with us. You can still teach release of pressure. So with Hendrix, you guys can absolutely teach the concept of loose leash and the concept of pulling. We want to do it in different equipment. So I do walk my dogs for loose leash on a body harness. They also do dog-powered sports in a different body harness. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. So even though it's a harness, it's a different piece of equipment and they can absolutely understand the difference. And I still do that release. Hi, Janetta. I do that release of leash pressure so that they're understanding, oops, I made a mistake. I feel tension. What's going on back there? What is mom or dad doing at the other end of the leash? And I reinforce that with food so that we start to understand this big picture of focus to me earns reinforcement, loose leash forward motion gets reinforcement. And if we get that oops moment and feel pressure, they can turn around and check in with us. Now, that all sounds easy, right? It sounds very clear. We've got lots of things that we can work on. But in reality, when we put it all together, it's not easy. Because guys, if it was, I wouldn't have a job. One of the biggest concerns that people have with leash walk or with their dog are leash walking and getting the dog to come when called, because they're not easy skills to teach. So if you're having trouble, don't beat yourself up about it. It takes some time and it takes consistency. So when you guys are out with your dogs doing loose leash walking, it's really, really important that every single excursion is a training excursion. Our dogs are unable to understand the difference between I'm going to go out for a training walk and we're going to click and treat and reward loose leash. And then opposite of that is I'm going out for an exercise walk and you're allowed to pull, unless we're setting very, very clear guidelines. So my first recommendation is remember that every experience your dog has, they're learning from. So if we're trying really hard to build a nice, reliable loose leash, it's really important that we're consistent. We want every time that dog or puppy is on leash for them to go, okay, I know what we're doing. It's this whole loose leash, I move with mom thing, right? So every single time we're on leash, they're training. They're learning the behavior that we do want, which is loose leash. Now, I understand that we don't live in this perfect dreamy world where every single time we head out, we have the ability to do this, right? Sometimes we're going to go for a hike and maybe our dog is still working on excitement with their loose leash. Or we've got a puppy and we want them to be able to do a little socialization and exploring without having to work on loose leash, right? Or we live in an apartment or a condo and we have to head out for quick potty breaks. So it's really important during those times when we're not training, we're not doing that loose leash, that we're making the picture look really different. So the biggest thing that I do is I'll use a long line. So they have leashes that come in everything from 10 feet all the way up to 30 feet. The longer leash you get, the harder it is for you to manage the line. So I'd recommend starting smaller, and then make sure that you practice handling this leash as a completely separate human mechanic component, because you're going to want to be really comfortable managing all that extra material that you're having to hold. So if you wanted to go out and do 5 minutes of loose leash walking practice, and then you wanted to go for a 10-minute walk, switch the leash. So I move them from my standard 5-foot, 6-foot leash to this long line. I'm not using my normal cues anymore. I'm not saying with me, which means for them to walk next to me or with me, right? They're allowed to go explore, and it's more of what we call a choice walk, where the dog gets to go where they want to go. They get to explore. I might throw in a few attention grabbers with their name. I might throw in a few hand targets to get them to come back to me. But in general, it's a walk where they get to do a little bit more exploring and have a little more freedom. And this is really, really good for puppies too, because you can see a lot of frustration and stress with the puppies where everything is so structured, and they don't have that ability to go explore. So we do a lot of this even in the neighborhood, and I much prefer this to like an extendable leash or a flexi leash, which I know some people use. I don't recommend those because it's really easy for us to cause injury to ourselves. I've seen all kinds of crazy, scary things. And there's always tension on the line. So if you think about how a flexi lead works, I'm holding a handle and the lead comes out and there's pressure, right? It's pulling the line out of the piece that I'm holding. And so with this mechanism, there's always going to be pressure on your dog, right? But with this long line and us trying to teach this concept of loose leash, they have that freedom to move around without the pressure, because our goal is that we're not reinforcing the pressure, right? They're not getting forward when they feel pressure on the line. So if you want to do a little bit of loose leash walking practice and then want to go hike or explore or play in the river, swap out that lead to a long line so that your dog has a little bit more freedom to move around. I've got some comments here. I'm going to look at these real quick. Lynn, North Star does not play name game. No response, just the stink eye. So if you are struggling with attention, I would really work on attention inside the house at first, because remember that if we have attention, I can ask my dog to come when called. I can ask them to get into heel position. I can ask them to let's go and change direction with me. Attention is your ultimate foundation behavior. But when we're out in the real world doing things like walks or loose leash walking training, that attention is really hard because there's so many things out in the world, let's face it, that are more exciting than paying attention to me and my pieces of kibble, right? So we've got to build this skill of attention in really low distraction environments so that our dog nails it, right? So that inside in a structured 2-minute routine, we can cue our dog for focus and they're like, yep, what do you need? And they give us that attention right away. And then we want to slowly take that skill out on the back deck, out on the front deck, out in the driveway, before we're even working on the concept of loose leash. Building that attention and the ability and drive to work with the human in low distraction, and then slowly working up to that environment where you're going to need it for loose leash. So let's see here. Where do I put that 25 leash for recall? Yeah, so when you are working on your loose leash walking and we want to use that long line, remember that you can put it in a backpack if I'm headed out, to a park or something like that. I do that a lot because I always want to bring extra treats with me. I want to bring a variety of treats so that in case my dog stops working for what I have, I can switch it. And then I always bring water for them. So if you're heading out, a backpack is a really easy way to kind of keep all the extra goodies. If you're staying close to home or walking at a park around your car, you could certainly leave all of that into the car. But I like to have that with me so that if I need to take a break from loose leash walking because we're starting to see maybe a decrease in behavior, my dog's getting distracted, then I want to swap over to that long line to give them a little bit more freedom. So attention is kind of the ultimate behavior that we are going to start with. And we need that attention in the house, in the driveway, in the front yard. After this is done, I will edit the description for you guys so that there will be links to those tutorial videos for you. But the name game is your ultimate foundation behavior. So once we have our attention, then we need to start teaching this concept of loose leash. And this is hard, especially for dogs that already have history of pulling, right? If maybe we're working with a 5-year-old who's already been pulling for a while. It's also hard for puppies because connecting with us and moving with us is really hard when they're so focused on everything around. So when I'm starting, I'll actually turn and take a step backwards. And I literally take one step at a time, right? It's take a step, click as they're moving with you on a loose leash, and then treat. Now, mechanics wise, I will show you guys. So it's easiest for you to have your leash and your clicker in the same hand and then have one hand completely open for treat delivery. So I always put my hand through this loop and then bring it back over my hand and close it. And my clicker will go in this hand. And then I have a completely separate hand to grab treats from my treat bag and deliver. So I'm taking one step back, click treat, one step back, click treat, one step back, click treat. When that gets easy, 2 steps, click treat. 2 steps, click treat. And then we move to 3 and 4. When I can get 4 steps, especially for those puppies, 4 steps in a row backwards, then I'm going to start turning around and walking forwards. Now remember, it's not a perfect heel. We're not teaching a formal obedience heel here. This is just move with me on a loose leash. However, we always want to deliver our treat in the same place because it's going to encourage our dog to move back. So if I take a step forward and they're just a little bit in front of me, totally fine, as long as that leash is loose, I'll click and then deliver that treat in the same place so that they're continuing to come back to me instead of me fishing forward and trying to find them and their mouth. The other thing you could do is you could drop your treat on the ground. If you want to drop your treat on the ground, this is a good option for dogs that are maybe really aroused or excited by their environment, or dogs that are sharky, right? If I go to feed them a cookie and they take a finger with it, dropping the treat on the ground is a good option for you guys. But remember that we want to have a treat that contrasts the surface they're walking on. So if I'm walking on the road, which is black asphalt, I'm going to use something like diced mozzarella string cheese that's white so the dog can see the treat. I don't recommend feeding the treat on the ground if you're walking in grass because it's really hard for the dog to find it. And then we kind of lose some of that, forward motivation that we've got. So in that circumstance, I recommend a squeeze tube. So you guys can actually go to somewhere like CVS or Walgreens or order online. They've got little travel-sized shampoo bottles that are kind of like silicone, and you can actually fill it with a little bit of watered down peanut butter. You could fill it with canned food, and then you've got something where each time you click, you squeeze a little and your dog licks it. So that would be a nice option too for you to not get those fingers eaten as you're trying to deliver treats in the grass. So when we start, we are taking one step at a time and clicking and treating the dog each time. And as they do well, we're taking more and more steps between each click and treat so that we can get up to 5 steps and 10 steps and 15 steps. Now remember, this is a training walk, not an exercise walk. So I'm taking into consideration the amount of time we're walking. Just like when I train indoors, I'm going to keep sessions structured to 3 to 5 minutes max. And if I'm working with a puppy, even shorter. And then in between that little mini session, I might ask for attention with the name game and then, okay, go sniff. And I'm going to release my dog or my puppy to go explore the environment around me. So I generally stand still and whatever they have access to in that area, they can kind of check out. And that ability to sniff and explore that environment is going to be that much needed mental break that they need. And after a little bit of time, I'll call their name again, Lennon, Lucy, click and treat that focus, and then, okay, let's go. And we start moving again. So you can use access to the environment, not only as a break in your little training sessions, but also as an opportunity for them to go, oh, okay, I can still explore my environment. It's just when they tell me I get to. And this is good too, because then we can control which areas they have access to for safety purposes. I've certainly worked with lots of clients in more of the city environment, and there's garbage and there can be chicken bones on the ground. And certainly we want to control the environment that our dog is exploring in so that they don't accidentally get access to those things. So I see some more things popping up here. So let's see. Kelsey says, the long line is hard for Kumba. Means running. Yes. So if you are using a long line, Kelsey, you might even consider changing length of long line. So for example, if you always use a 30-foot for fetch, it's really easy for that 30-foot line to become associated with high energy, high excitement, freedom. You could even have something like a 10-foot line that's maybe even like this in a different color to signal to the dog that this long line time is a little bit different. My general long lines that I'll use kind of in busier environments are like 10 feet long, so that they've got a little bit more freedom, but it's not totally out of control where we're going to get wrapped around trees and stuff like that. So even having a different long line, different color can help signal to them. The other thing that you could do is work on a little bit of calmness on the long line before you release him, because he's an adult dog. So you could work on some sits, work on some attention, and then very easily, okay, go sniff right next to you. So it's not like we're releasing him to, okay, go run, right? And then anytime he starts to wander too far away, you can call his name and do a recall to get him back to you. And then work on a little bit of stillness again to help him kind of, and take a deep breath to kind of help slow him down a little bit. Let's see. I have to admit, this morning at 6 a.m. when we walked Hendrix using a 50-foot long line, felt so much better than his regular 6-foot. Yeah, give him more freedom. Yeah, really, really nice. He didn't want to do this with his regular training cookies, only worked for the Ziwi air-dried lamb. Well, let's be honest. Outdoors are really exciting for our dogs. So we've got to be able to find a treat that motivates them. But I'm really glad that you guys found success with that long line. It's a really nice way to just kind of give them a little more freedom and allow them to be a dog, because, a lot of things in their life they don't have control over. So going on those nice choice walks, I call them, because I let the dog choose where they want to go and what they want to explore. We stop and sniff when they want to. They'll come home so exhausted and so tired from that, because we are giving them the ability to take in all the information around them. So when you guys are working on your loose leash walking, remember that this is hard. It's something that takes a long time to build, and it is work, okay? So we need to make sure that we're separating training sessions into short little sessions where then you can decide, hey, do I want to stop and just let them explore around me? Or do I want to move a little bit more, get a little more exercise in? And then that long line can be your friend to kind of help make sure that every time they're on that short, structured leash, they understand that we are moving forward with loose leash. So it gives them the ability to explore a little bit more without causing frustration with us or with our dogs. So the other thing that I want to talk about today is kind of some of the main mistakes that people make with loose leash walking. Because it takes a long time to build, and we can get really frustrated with it and either give up or try to do these little things. So the separating of loose leash walks and for training and exercise, that's one of the big ones, is that people try to go, oh, okay, well, in my brain, this is an exercise and this is training. Our dogs don't make that difference, that association. So long line is the way that we solve that, right? We can give them the ability to explore with giving a little more freedom to them without undoing all that hard work that we're putting in on teaching loose leash. Another really common challenge that people have is that they try to take away the food too early. And when I tell people, like, fill your treat bag, pack extras, we're starting with one step at a time. People are like, what? But it takes a long time to teach this. And what we're doing is teaching the dog that despite all these distractions around us, staying close to me on a loose leash is what is reinforcing. So we really need a high rate of reinforcement, or we need to click and treat often to help our dogs understand this behavior. And it's really easy for us to go, they're pretty good. And then we stop bringing the food out, right? Or, oh, I just need to go out for a quick walk, and they don't bring the food out. And what happens when we do that is we start to see the behavior unravel. And I really caution you guys on this, because you have put in so much time trying to teach this concept of loose leash. So if you take away the food too early, it's like taking a giant withdrawal from your bank account that you've been putting in a couple dollars every day, right? It's undoing all this hard work that you've been putting in. So how do we still make sure that we're reinforcing the behavior enough? And how do we set the teacher up for success? One thing you can do is you can always have your treat bag filled with high value treats in the fridge. And that's a really easy way for you. It's always ready. So anytime you're headed out for a quick walk, you can grab it. Another thing that you can do is have little treat bags already prepped if it's a shelf stable treat, and put them by your leash so that every time you grab your leash, you can grab a treat bag. And by putting a little bit of effort in on the front end, that will help you guys make sure that you're successful, that you're grabbing those treats every single time you're headed out. Another thing that I have seen recently, actually from one of my other trainer friends, was they went and got a wall-mounted cereal dispenser, and they put shelf-stable treats inside there so that it's right by the door, right by the leashes. So literally every time you're headed out, you could put your treat bag underneath, fill it up, and then you're good to go. So by making sure you guys have those treats all the time, that's going to make sure that you have the ability to work with them outside. Now, the other thing in terms of food reinforcement is that we want to make sure we're reinforcing the behavior as often as we need to keep the behavior. So I was talking earlier about taking steps, 1 step at a time, 2 steps, then we're getting 10. Once we get up into bigger numbers, try to be random. We don't want our dogs to predict. So I might do 10 steps, click treat, 15, click treat, 4, click treat, 10, click treat. And then as I'm in those bigger numbers where I'm taking more and more steps between each reinforcer, I am making sure that I increase how rewarding it is for the dog to be near me when we get closer to distractions. Because remember, it's not just the concept of loose leash, but it's loose leash even when I want to go sniff and pee on that post. And it's loose leash even when there's another dog walking beside the street. So I might be able to have a really large number of steps between each treat when there's no distractions. But then as I see, a little fluffy dog on leash starting to walk towards me, I'm increasing how frequently I'm clicking and treating to remind the dog that it's better to stay with me even though you see that excitement, right? And as your dog gets better and better, I start saying, okay, my dog can really easily walk past that little fluffy dog. But maybe kids on bikes is harder. So when I see that little fluffy dog pass, they end up getting 1 cookie after the puppy passes, but then I'm increasing reinforcement when those kids and bikes are around, right? So you can start picking and choosing. That is now easy for my dog to handle. It's really easy for them to keep focus and stay with me when that passes. So maybe I'll use a go sniff or 1 cookie after they pass. But then for the harder, more challenging things, I'm continuing to reinforce my dog. Hi, it's good to stay with me even though something really exciting is happening. Got a question from Kim here. What do you do with a dog that food or toys is less important than his surroundings? Awesome question, Kim, because this can absolutely happen with us and our dogs, right? I've got chicken and they go, yeah, but I want to go sniff that tree. Right? Totally a normal challenge. There are 2 things that I like to look at when we have a dog that isn't really interested in what we have and is more focused on everything else. The first thing we want to look at is whether or not the dog has what I want, right? Do they want this treat? If I'm standing totally still in the driveway, will they take this food from me? And if they won't take the food from me, can I increase the value of the treat until eventually they go, oh yeah, I do want that. Right? So sometimes it's a balance of finding what works for your dog. Dogs who are maybe a little less motivated by food, we really have to up the ante and make it worthwhile for them. So in the beginning, when I was teaching Lennon, actually, loose leash walking, he was super stimulated by everything around him. And so honestly, the only thing that worked for him was like baked chicken. That was the only treat he would take outside. And so that's what I brought because I needed to make sure that I had something he wanted to work for in that environment. It has since improved and we can use other things. But sometimes, especially in the beginning, it's all about finding what motivates them. The other thing that I like to look at is there a reason my dog can't pay attention to me here? So this could be something underlying like stress or fear. So I want to make sure I'm looking at body language of the dog. Could also happen from change in training methods, right? If I have historically been something scary, then my dog might not want to pay attention to me. So I always like to address, does my dog want what I have? And is there something underlying that's maybe preventing the dog from paying attention? And if there is, then we want to try to make that environment easier for the dog so that they can be successful. Okay, so those are things we want to address beforehand. Now, let's say the dog wants what I have. When I'm standing in the driveway, they'll take the food, or when I'm standing in the road, they'll take the food. But if they have the option between taking my food or taking my toy and going to sniff, they go pick sniff, then awesome. Put that behavior on cue and use that to your advantage. So let's go back to the situation I was talking about with the little fluffy white dog walking down the street, right? If I know that my dog would rather go explore, I'll put that on cue, which I do with go sniff. So I see the dog approaching and I say, watch me, nice, what a good boy. I praise him as that dog passes, and then, okay, go sniff. So instead of clicking and treating, I use the ability to go explore the environment as the reinforcer. And I'll even do this on walks when they go pull to sniff on their own, right? Pulling to go sniff does not get you the sniffs. But if you can walk past it with me, I go, oops, let's go. Okay, go sniff, right? So I can use the ability to access their environment as a reward to a reasonable extent. I don't want to use going to greet strange dogs as a reinforcer. I'd be very careful about how often I let them go see people as their reinforcer, right? Because we really want the dog focused in on us and not assuming they get to go see everybody that's out. But I would work really hard on putting that on a verbal cue so that you can use that to your advantage and use that as a reinforcer. Anna, hashtag Northern breeds. Yes, Northern breeds, they're hard. I have them too. A lot of them are maybe not as motivated by food as a Labrador or a Golden Retriever, so we have to work hard. I work a lot on building food reinforcement as a behavior, so that when I hand them something, they take it, and I'll reward the behavior of eating. So that's something that you could try at home too, making sure that you're really teaching him how to take treats, how to pay attention to you. And I do a lot of foundation of paying attention to me is a good thing, right? Even just standing outside for 2 minutes a day and rewarding them anytime they check in on their own, so that they're starting to figure out good things happen when they connect and pay attention to mom. So another common mistake that people make when they are trying to teach their dogs or their puppies how to walk on a loose leash is trying to rely on a piece of equipment to teach a skill. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, with our harness Facebook Live that we did. A lot of harness companies are marketing like no pull harnesses. Don't rely on that, guys, because pulling is a behavior and loose leash is a behavior. And a lot of those pieces of equipment, those harnesses designed as no pull, actually restrict motion, will cause issues in the shoulder. And so I always make sure that the dog has full range of motion, they're comfortable in whatever I'm putting on, and then that's just the equipment, right? That's just what they wear. But outside of that, I'm teaching this concept of moving with me on a loose leash, okay? So it's complicated and it takes a long time. Like I said, if it was easy, I wouldn't have a job. We want to make sure that we're practicing consistently. We're using high value treats that they really want. And we want to start in really easy, low distraction environments. So when I'm starting off with a puppy, I start off indoors. We practice the concept of walking around in the house. When they do well with that, we'll move to the backyard and we'll practice walking around the backyard. I always like to kind of talk to people about loose leash walking like a yo-yo. So if I'm holding a yo-yo, it goes away and it comes back. And this piece where it comes back to is our house. And so I really honestly will start from the front door and take a couple steps away, click and treat, and then return to the house. And each time we get further and further away, that middle portion becomes easier for the dog. And so they're building up a really nice, okay, we're not going to the park every single time we walk, or we're not going down the block and to the right. We're going to walk in this area that you feel comfortable in. And each time we head out, it's going to get easier and easier for you to go further and further with them. So take your time, use high value treats, be patient with them, give them lots of opportunities for play or sniffing as breaks, and then make sure that you're really, if you are going out for those, excursion type walks, that you're making a big change in equipment to help your dog understand the difference between loose leash close to us, and now we've got a long line, so we've got a bit of freedom. And that's a really nice way if you're starting to work on it, so that your dog can have a bit more access to things. So what's next, right? You are on your leash walking journey and you want to make sure that you're setting your dog up for success. After this is finished, I'm going to edit the description and I will give you guys links to all of our tutorials on the behavior, each behavior I talked about. So we talked about the name game, or attention on cue. We talked about release of pressure, where the dog reaches the end of the line and can check back in. We talked about rewarding loose leash, forward motion, and we talked about a hand target. We've got free tutorials for you guys on all of those things. So I will post those in the links for you. And I want to tell you too that if you ever feel like, gosh, I've tried this isn't working, or I've tried everything, a lot of the times that's an indicator that you're feeling frustrated and you've tried everything right? But there's always more solutions. So don't give up. If you want loose leash, you can get it. You just might need to bring in a professional to help you work on that. It could be me virtually. It could be another trainer that's local that uses positive reinforcement, but a little bit of kind of a new viewpoint on things really can go a long way in terms of success and helping you guys get that loose leash that you want. So I hope that this was really helpful for you guys. If you guys have questions, I'll keep an eye on this thread and I will get back to you if you weren't able to watch this live with us. Next Tuesday, same time, we're going live again. And next week is all about living in a multi-dog household. So if you are planning on getting a second dog or already have a second dog, we're going to talk about different ways that you can use management in your home to help reduce problems in a multi-dog household. We're also going to talk about how to train in a multi-dog household, because that's a big challenge. It's like, I've got this puppy. How do I work with this puppy when I also have this adult around? So we're going to give you guys a few ideas on how you can train in those multi-dog households. So thank you all for joining us today. We had some awesome questions. I'm glad to see you guys tuning in, wanting to teach your dogs how to walk on a loose leash. If you have questions that you think of afterwards, feel free to post them in the comments and we will get back to you. Otherwise, we will update our description with all those free tutorials and links for you guys. And we hope to see you all next Tuesday for our discussion on multi-dog households. All right, guys, have a great week.